Hey, everybody. Welcome to Speechless, this week's edition. I'm your host, Phares. Obviously, we'll get right on into the radio show soon. This is my my live radio show that I do on Sundays from 3 to 5. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. We're going to cover a lot of topics here today, including Liz Cheney potentially running for president, the Israel and Palestine conflict continuing, and then we have conflicts abroad as well. I'm sorry, conflicts domestic. We have our Speaker of the House race and everything like that, and that has been quite the crap show. But we're gonna cover all that here and more today on Speechless. Thanks for tuning in. So the radio show will be coming on soon, everybody. Once again, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to leave some comments here. And only 9 more days of Sober October left. Sober October is a liberal lie created to keep fun out of our lives. That's my belief right there. That's funny though. We're gonna get right on into that. Hey, Bloomington Normal. Welcome back to Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. I'm your host, Kev Phares, 22-year-old conservative college student from Illinois State University. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you are listening on the radio right now, you could be driving, and so I don't necessarily want you to switch over right now. But if you get home and you want to interact with me in the studio live, what you can do is you can go over to YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, or Rumble, and just look up Speechless with Kev, and I should be the first thing that comes up. Or you can go to the Cities 92.9 Facebook page, and I am right there too. Everybody, don't forget, if you are watching on any of those platforms, or you go watch on any of those platforms even after the show airs, you can like this video, subscribe to the channel on YouTube. I am almost to 1,000 subscribers. Thank you to everybody who has ever tuned in and subscribed to that channel. And share this video with your friends, comment what you think, everything like that. We can interact with each other and have a good time doing so, especially even during the breaks. Before I get into all the content and everybody, I do want to give a big shout out to my friend, Paul Garcia. Paul Garcia of Paul Garcia Productions creates stunning and effective video advertisements for local businesses and even in some cases local government. And he has just done amazing work. He's helped support this show and sponsored this show and allowed us to be able to get on these platforms like YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and Rumble, and everything like that. So please go check out Paul Garcia Productions today. His stuff is in his information is in the comment section of this video or in the description. And so you can go check it out there on YouTube. But let's get right on into it, everybody. So this morning, Jake Tapper had Liz Cheney on CNN for State of the Union. Yes, to discuss a few different topics, especially as it pertains to what seems to be some level of dysfunction in the current Republican Party, especially in the House, as she is a former House of Representatives member. Focus heavily on the idea that she's former because she is actually what a rhino is. And we're going to talk about what I mean by that in a little bit, but let's listen and talk about what Liz Cheney actually had to say on Jake Tapper's State of the Union this morning, once again on CNN.
But if it came down to it, even though you disagree with Joe Biden on almost every issue under the sun, other than maybe Ukraine and Israel, would you vote for him over Donald Trump?
We're going to see what happens. We're going to see how things unfold. I think Donald Trump is the single most dangerous threat we face. I would imagine that there will be a number of other candidates in the race.
Would you be one of them?
I think I'll tell you what I am definitely going to do. I'm going to spend the next year between now and the election certainly helping to elect serious people, helping to elect sane people. I think that we could well find ourselves in a situation, given what we know the Trump folks are doing in terms of attempting to question the results of the election. We don't want a situation where the election is thrown into the House of Representatives and Donald Trump has any possibility at all of prevailing under those circumstances. So we've got to elect people who believe in the Constitution and who take their responsibilities seriously to Congress. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time doing that in addition to other things.
But you're not ruling out a presidential run?
No, I'm not.
Okay. She's not ruling out a presidential run. Everybody, that was Liz Cheney once again on State of the Union on CNN earlier this morning. And wow, okay, there's a lot to break down there. First off, let's just compare some things right here, because in that interview, she also said that Trump was currently like the greatest threat to America right now. Now, I have other ideas on what the greatest threat is, but do these sound like things that would be comparable to what the greatest threat actually is? Trump is running, obviously, as we know, for 2024 campaign for a second term in the White House and has dominated Republican presidential nomination polls in a field with several other candidates. If he prevails in the primary contest, Trump is poised to have a 2020 rematch against Biden. So, it's pretty safe to say that Trump is a highly influential member of the Republican Party. Also, if you look at all of his policy that he's had in the past, while some of it I do believe did not necessarily fulfill all the promises that he at one point made, we did have a much safer border, a much better economy, a much safer country with empowering law enforcement. Like, there is so much to say that Trump is such a great threat to this nation is just a bold-faced lie. And then compare that to Cheney's record. Out of the Daily Wire, Cheney lost her primary last year to now Representative Harriet Hageman, who was endorsed by Trump after establishing herself as the top foe of the MAGA movement and serving as vice chairwoman of the January 6th committee. So that was all Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney has consistently worked against Republicans. This is clear, and this is obvious. I mean, even in that own interview in which she says that she's not ruling out a 2024 presidential run, she says that in her time, she plans on working for quote unquote sane candidates. Yeah, sane candidates, even asked by Jake Tapper if that would include people from both parties. And she said, yes, it would include people from both parties. Now, what I plan to do is keep an eye on what kind of candidates Liz Cheney is actually supporting, working with, and helping. Because those will be the candidates, I guarantee you, I predict now, that those will be the candidates that lose. Liz Cheney is a rhino. Rhino being Republican in name only, not spelled the same as rhinoceros rhino. That's R-H-I-N-O. I'm talking about R-I-N-O, rhino, Republican in name only. And why do I say that? Because she has consistently gone against the grain in supporting what is popular amongst Republicans, not only policy-wise, but politician-wise as well. And she's right now fighting for relevance. That is what Liz Cheney is doing. She recognizes that Trump and Trump policy and Trump-like candidates are what is winning with Republicans. That is what is winning. Cheney is a dino, a rhino dino, a dinosaur that still embraces Bush-era politics, much like her father, rolling over to Democrats. Like, this is what in Hillary Clinton's clip I've played on this show before. DPB just played it on his show as well. Hillary Clinton talks about how there used to be a time when Republicans and Democrats could get together and they could work on things and seriously consider ideas about climate change and the economy and all these things. Yeah, that was back in a time when we had Republicans that would push an idea of, well, as long as we win on the economy, then it's okay. And we can sacrifice all the social issues so that we can try to win on the economy. And then they still wouldn't win on the economy. That's what we used to have. And for some reason, that's what Cheney wants. And I think I know that reason. Because these are people where they will consistently push this division as if it's Trump versus all the other Republicans or it's Republicans versus Democrats. When what do I always say, everybody? The real issue is the establishment, both sides, the establishment of both the Republicans and the Democrats versus everybody else. And so they try to pin us against each other. They try to pin us against each other in petty partisan ways to ensure that we're focused on that rather than their overall goals of self-advancement. That's what they do. And I want to circle back to Jen Psaki for a second. I want to circle back to what I say about Rhino. Okay, so I posted some videos on my YouTube channel recently. You guys can go check them out. You can go look up Speechless with Kev Phares on YouTube. See, I do off-air content there. But I've posted some videos where I talk about maybe my belief in Ron DeSantis as a more viable candidate. My reasoning for that being that he's a candidate that can actually serve for 8 years. I think he has a great record in Florida, and I think he'd be a great option if the election were held today for president of the United States. I would vote for Ron DeSantis. That's me. I know other people are different. That's perfectly fine. Well, I've had some comments on these posts, on these videos, that say that DeSantis is a rhino or I'm a rhino because Trump is the only way. And I can understand people wanting to vote for Trump. He's in my top 2, 3 for sure. And if he's the Republican nominee for president, he's the one I'll be voting for. That's my plan. But that doesn't automatically make DeSantis a rhino. Now, there are other Republicans that are on the debate stage that are rhinos. There absolutely are. Chris Christie being one of them. And it's not just because he's entirely against Trump. It's because he plays into the partisan anti-Trump, and then also consistently supports policy that gives way to the Democrats to just trample over Republicans again. That's more of a rhino. DeSantis doesn't give way for Democrats to be able to allow Republicans to just roll over. That's not how it works. And that's the problem that I'm seeing. And I know I get critical of Republicans on this show, and that can really tick people off. And if you're one of the people that's ticked off, that's perfectly fine. Don't forget, you can text or call in at 309-451-9299. That's that number, 309-451-9299. Become part of the conversation by texting or calling in at 309-451-9299. But my problem is that a lot of times Republicans recently, and especially those that are very favorable to Trump, which again, I have no issue with. I am in some ways also favorable to Trump. But when you call everything a rhino, it starts to lose its meaning. If you say that somebody who is not who is somewhat critical of Trump is a rhino, well, that makes everything a rhino then, and thus nothing is. It no longer has its meaning. And the reason why I want to warn us of this, of calling everything a rhino, saying everything's a rhino, or if you don't support Trump, you're automatically a Democrat. The reason why I want to warn against that is because that's what the left has done to words like racist, Nazi, fascist. They've consistently said everything Donald Trump supports, or they say things like wanting ballot or voter ID is racist. They say wanting voter ID is racist, and if you believe that voter ID is a good idea, then you are a racist. Well, that word has no meaning anymore then. Everything's racist by that standpoint. Everything is racist by that standpoint. They say Donald Trump is the next Hitler, and that he's a Nazi, and that he's a fascist. Not only is that blatantly untrue, if you reduce the ideas of Nazism and fascism to somebody who never once advocated for, called for, or ever even attempted genocide, racial discrimination, anything like that, religious discrimination, nothing like that, then you are reducing it so those words have no meaning anymore. And that is the perversion of language that the left seeks to have. Because if they continuously broaden the scope of what these words mean, and they're sharp words, that's the thing, to the layman, the person that does not pay attention to politics, the person that would not be listening to this show or watching it on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, or Rumble, those people will hear Trump's a racist, and they'll hear it enough. And to them, they have the original connotation of racism. Your average layman hears racist, and they think that's somebody who's prejudiced against people because of their race. And they will take that, into consideration when they go and vote. We cannot be reducing these terms. Now, to be clear, Liz Cheney is a rhino. Her actions have shown that. But define that word. If you're going to call me a rhino for not necessarily being 100% pro-Trump all the time, that's fine. Liz Cheney is a rhino. Definition of the term, as I stated before, and as I will state again. A rhino, Republican in name only, means that you will consistently go against Republicanism, not in a way that is just critical for the benefit of Republicanism. No, in a way that is purposefully damaging and harmful to the party for some ulterior motive, a clear ulterior motive, which Liz Cheney obviously has. One, she's going against Republicans in the fact that she's already said that she will work for Democrats as she sees them as more sane. Some of them. That's one example. She has also said that she's not clear as to whether or not, if the election was between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, which one she would vote for. I think if you're a Republican and not just a Republican in name only, then you would know who you would vote for between those two. No, Liz Cheney is absolutely a rhino. But when I say that word, I want to be clear that we cannot overuse that word. And that's what I am trying to say, everybody. We are not we cannot just call everybody a rhino. And not everybody does this, but it's just something that I've seen in the comments on my posts, in things, because I am critical of both sides, and that's something that we need to be. Look, Liz Cheney does it in a way that is purposefully destructive to the Republican Party. But we have other Republicans, even on the more conservative end of the spectrum, that are rightfully, and in some ways I disagree with them on maybe some of their messaging or the ways they go about it. But Matt Gaetz has been openly critical of decisions made by the Republican Party. And if your criticism is for the purpose and you make it clear that it is for the purpose of strengthening the party overall, then you're not a rhino. And I can tell you, every time I've been critical of the Republican Party, whether that's at a very local level through our own McLean County Republicans down that we have here, or to the national level, to certain politicians, people running, or the party itself, it is for the purpose of believing that we can create a stronger party as a whole. That is why I do it. That is why I do it. And everybody, I firmly believe that we can take back 2024. We can take back the Senate. We can strengthen our majority in the House. We can take back the presidency, and we can secure our borders, fix our economy, and ensure the right to life for all people. Broaden our Second Amendment rights. More and more and more. Consistently going with conservative policy as long as we put the right people in and don't eat our own heads. We can do it, everybody. And we're going to cover a little bit of some more criticism of the Republican Party, but not just the Republican Party, of a lot of people in Congress and the government, which is what I love about the First Amendment, is that we can be critical of the institutions that govern us. And that's what I'm going to do in the next segment, everybody, as we talk a little bit more about the House of Representatives and what is going on with the speakership, filling you in on maybe what you might not know, and also recapping where we've gone in just the last few weeks in terms of this controversial episode that we're seeing in our United States government. Everybody, we'll be right back, though, with more Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Don't forget, you can text or call in and be involved in the show at 309-451-9299. I'd love to hear more of what you have to say. That number, once again, is 309-451-9299. Let's hear it, and we'll be right back. Okie dokie, everybody. Great to see you guys in the comments. Let's see who we got in here. I'd agree with this. But even, I mean, her dad is kind of a silent partner in a lot of things, it seems like, because he still makes his voice heard every once in a while. But he has definitely crept back into the bushes a little bit. But great to see you, Guillotine. Ryan Mack, thank you for tuning in. This, absolutely. Thank you very much, Becky. I appreciate you tuning in. And for the comment, I'm just silly wasting my time talking about DeSantis because you'll be voting for Trump in the 2024. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. I think it's worth considering every candidate and their merits and their demerits. And that's what I try to do here. This absolutely is another very good definition of what we mean. This is funny. Hypocritical person on TV. How's it going, Andrea? Good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back soon live here on the radio, everybody. Talk a little bit about the speaker race, Speaker of the House race, and everything like that. Who do you guys want to be the speaker? Let me know in the chat. Who do you want to be the speaker? This is one. I've heard that name. He's not one that I've done the most research on. We'll talk a little bit about that in the next segment when we come back. But this is a name that I've heard floated around a bit. And we will be right back in like 5 seconds. I'll play this song for you guys.
And I'm doing more than just survive. Yeah, I'm gonna thrive.
Yeah, I'm gonna thrive, everybody. That song is called Thrive by Miller Holler. It actually came out back in 2020, but I believe it's more relevant than ever as we see the increase of war and things going on. If you want to support a good conservative Republican band, Miller Holler, who actually played at the Six Strings Club last night, I was in attendance. Good friends of mine are members of that band. I've actually had Pat, the lead singer, on my show before, and he's always been a very fun and energetic person, not only on stage, but also when talking about political issues, especially as it relates to the music business. Go look up Thrive by Miller Holler, everybody. Great, great, great song. We got a lot more to talk about here on Speechless, and if you're just tuning in and this is your first time, I'm your host, 22-year-old conservative college student, Kev Phares, and I'm out here not only on the radio, but I'm also here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble. All you got to do is look up Speechless with Kev Phares, and I'm right there. And if you're tuning in, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, because we know ScrewTube and all these other platforms don't want people talking about this in a real way. They don't want the layman. They want the lamestream media to be the ones controlling the narrative. But I know that that's not the way things are. And I want to be a voice, not only for myself and my opinions, but also for yours as well. So that's why I always invite you to get involved in the conversation, whether that's in the comment section or you can text or call in at 309-451-9299 is that number, 309-451-9299, guys. Okay, so let's get on into this story. This is a shorter segment, so I won't have too much time, but I'll preview it for the next longer segment. We're going to talk about the Speaker of the House race, everybody. The Speaker of the House. Let's do a quick recap on this, on what's just happened, because it feels like we haven't had a Speaker of the House in a long time, when in reality, it's only been like 3-ish weeks. So let's take a look at this. First, we had McCarthy. We know all the way back in January, there was the 15 votes. Maybe it was February. I don't remember the exact month, but earlier in the year, we had the 15 votes to find, which was historic. It never happened before, to get McCarthy into that office. Obviously, many people saw it as somewhat of a compromise, as he's more of a swamp creature. I wouldn't necessarily go as much to say that he's a rhino, but he's been in politics for quite a while and does not have the cleanest conservative record. And then what had happened is we could not agree on a budget for our government. As always, Democrats wanted us to basically have it so that we could just have a blank check that we can continue writing more and more money to whatever social justice warrior causes they have. But then we did finally pass an irresponsible continuing resolution spending bill that lasted for only 45 days. We have about 26 days left on that 45 days. That'll end on November 17th. And then because of that continuing resolution, which once again was irresponsible, Matt Gaetz and a few others who tried to torpedo any CR bills, even ones that allowed for more funding to our southern border and cut funding to Ukraine, were mad at McCarthy because this was passed, because he allowed it on the floor, because he did that. So they voted to vacate him. They kicked him out of the office. Now, I was critical of this at the time. I don't think there's much reason to consistently dwell on why I'm critical of that. But I am going to talk a little bit about more in the next segment, why I kind of hate everybody involved in this situation. Why I understand the arguments from people that are supportive of no speaker and continuing government dysfunction. I understand that. And we're going to try to cover both sides of it. And I hope I can open you guys to a different perspective that just pretty much says everybody involved is crap. And I'm going to tell you exactly why in the next segment, but I do have to take another break on the radio. I know that was a short segment, but don't worry, everybody. If you just tune in a few minutes, I'll be right back to be able to talk more about the Speaker of the House controversy. And you can always tune in on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, or Rumble and be involved in the conversation, everybody, whether that's through the comments section or texting or calling in at 309-451-9299. I want to hear what you have to say at 309-451-9299. We'll be right back with more Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. Okay, guys, I know that was a very, very short segment, so I didn't really get too much into stuff. And I know I have to keep doing those resets in a streaming fashion. It's not always fun to hear me always have to do all those plugs for the YouTube and all that stuff and the phone number. But I want to make sure people on the radio know as well. Got to manage both sides of the mediums real well. Chip Roy, maybe. Okay. Interesting. That's not one of the lead contenders I've heard of, but it's one I haven't heard, or I have heard. Most conservative rep, that's who should be speaker. The uniparty swamp trolls need to be defeated. I can understand that. In an ideal world, I 100% agree. We're going to talk a little bit more about the political strategy of this as well. Thank you, Guillotine. I appreciate that very, very much. I need more light. I know, that's a studio issue. I'm sorry. I'll work on that. Yep, that's a studio issue. Mark Robinson out of Carolina for speaker. Interesting option. I'm curious what you guys think about the several names that I will be bringing up soon as we get back on the radio here in just a few minutes. I'm very curious as to what you guys will have to say about the ones that are being floated at the national level. The two front runners and the other ones that have voiced interest. Well, that's good. We need somebody who is willing to say absolute truths. We can't have anybody as a Speaker of the House that's wishy-washy on that. Not just there. We shouldn't have anybody in government that denies basic truth. But alas, a lot of people do. So for anybody that's tuning in and you didn't know, I will be hosting next Saturday. I'll be one of the hosts for a Halloween costume contest at the VFW Post 454 in Bloomington, Illinois. And so if you are in the area and you want to be a part of a costume contest and come say hi to me and interact, you're more than welcome to. A friend locally, Ryan McKinsey, I asked him what he would be for Halloween, as I will be going as Ken from the Barbie movie, specifically the Ken that has like the mink coat, like when he restores the patriarchy and everything. Because I think it looks badass. But this is what Ryan had to say to me in terms of my question as to what he would go as. So for Halloween, Ryan, you're more than likely to go as Barbie, but you would not be my Barbie in any way, shape, or form. I'd rather be a very, very single Ken than have you as my Barbie. Andrea, put your name in the hat. Announce it on social media. You're going to be speaker. Andrea for speaker. Andrea, you're also the one that has advocated openly on my show for anarchy and to basically do away with all government. So I don't even think, I think you'd get the speakership and you'd just be like, all right, everybody, we're screwed. Get out of here. We're done. Maybe I'm wrong, though. You could tell me if I'm wrong. We're coming back here in just about a minute, everybody. Cover more of the speakership and the news going on with it, the different names that are being floated, my thoughts on the candidates and my thoughts on the whole situation. Because I think it'll be quite controversial. But I also look at it significantly from like a political science perspective, and also very heavily focused on what we should see in 2024 and what this could mean for 2024. It's a calculation of how much time I would need. Well, I was right. Yep. Andrea just wants to take down the government from the inside. Get the speakership. Get to president. No more government for Andrea. This is funny. Guillotine. Everybody, in the next segment, if you're not just wanting to comment about all this stuff, I'll go through what I believe to be your best Halloween costumes if you want to comment what you're going to dress up for as Halloween. I'd love to know. Hey, and welcome back to Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. I'm your host, Kev Phares, 22-year-old conservative college student out of Central Illinois, obviously in Central Illinois if you're listening on your radio. But this is the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond because we are also on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble. All you got to do is go to the Cities 92.9 Facebook, or you can tune in on YouTube or any of the other platforms I said by looking up Speechless with Kev, and I should be the first thing. My bright and smiling face, you know how handsome I think I am? That's what you'll see. That's what you'll see, and you can like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment what you think, and share it with your friends. Once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and you can also interact on all of that stuff by commenting, asking questions, saying what you think, anything like that. But if you don't want to go onto those platforms, you can also text or call in at 309-451-9299 is that number, 309-451-9299. I'd love to know what you guys have to say. If you want to have a conversation about anything we're talking about, please give that number a call, 309-451-9299. Now let's get on into this story that I previewed in the last segment. We don't have a Speaker of the House. We haven't had one for quite a while. I know some people that work in the Capitol building, and I can tell you this is making their lives quite stressful. Not that that's a reason why we necessarily need to get a Speaker of the House in there right now, but I can tell you they're not quite very happy. But let's get into, I was going into a recap of everything that led us to where we are right now. Just to remind everybody, because this is all stuff that's happened for the most part, just within like the last 3 weeks. We had McCarthy. We passed a spending bill so that we could fund the government until November 17th, which is 26 days away. Well, that spending bill was relatively irresponsible, so Matt Gaetz and a few others led the charge to take McCarthy out, which is what happened. We all know that. Many, including myself, even criticized Matt Gaetz and his supporters for this a little bit because he didn't really have a plan, and that's kind of showing right now what the result of that is. Some say that not having a plan was part of the plan. I get where you're coming from. I'm still critical of it. But then after all that, we got Steve Scalise, who was the nominee, who was kind of more of somewhat of a wishy-washy-ish Republican. And he was not particularly the favorite by almost anybody. He was like moderately liked at best by most. So he was short-lived. Then we had Jim Jordan, a promising candidate, fairly conservative guy, but came across to a lot as level-headed, and for the most part. And he was a great choice. But he was bumped from the nomination. Now, what does this mean? To be clear, he was bumped from the nomination this last week after 2 votes in which he lost. Really what happened, what this means is that he is no longer the GOP nominee for Speaker, but he can still be voted for. So if you were a Jim Jordan big fan, he can still be voted for and he could still win, but he is no longer the GOP nominee. They're throwing tomatoes at a wall trying to figure out what'll stick so that we can get somebody in there. Now, let's go to today. As far as right before this show, when I was getting my research done for this, what do we know? We have about 9 to 10 different people that have expressed interest in the candidacy for the Speaker position. Now, there are a few that have announced that they want to be candidates for the Speaker. The first is Kevin Hern, which I know Ryan McKenzie brought up. He was a Republican out of Oklahoma, relatively conservative. Byron Donalds, who is a well-known Black Republican out of Florida. He has been consistently conservative for the most part. We got Jack Bergman, who I don't really know much about, a Republican from Michigan, and Pete Sessions, who's a Republican from Texas. They have all announced that they will be running. Most focused when they made their announcements on unifying the party. And like, while I understand that pitch, it's not really what I want to hear from a Speaker nominee. And it's not the main thing I want to hear. I want it to be part of it. But when your main pitch is unifying the party, I get it. That's going to come across as as favorable right now because we seem like a very dysfunctional and non-unified party. But I don't want a party that's unified in terms of everybody needs to be exactly the same on everything. Because I want some disagreement and I want criticism because we have bad Republicans. We do have, and again, I want to be clear that I use this term specifically, but we do have some rhinos in Congress. Some. But we don't want to unify. We don't want to push everybody. If you're a rhino and that's your convictions, well, you just need to be elected out. I don't want you pretending to be somebody that you aren't. So, but again, a lot of these speaker nominees have focused on unifying the party. In Byron Donalds' statement announcement, however, he stated, quote, "My sole focus will be securing our border, funding our government responsibly, advancing a conservative vision for the House of Representatives and the American people, and expanding our Republican majority." Now, again, if you are going to be the Republican nominee for the Speaker of the House, that should be your message. You can tack on a little bit in there that says, like, we also need to get everybody on the same page, or we need to like we need an idea of unifying the party with that. But your main goal as the Speaker of the House, when your job is to be kind of like the gatekeeper of legislation to an extent and bringing it to the floor and organizing the entire House, your main goal should be advancing Republicanism. And the big issues that Republicans need to solve right now, because Democrats aren't going to, is securing the border, having a strong economy, which comes with funding the government, but doing so responsibly, and then the overall advancement of Republican ideology. And that's exactly what Byron Donalds says. Now, others that have expressed interest in considering a run are House Majority Whip Tom Emmer, a Republican from Minnesota, who I've heard mixed reviews on when it comes to his level of conservatism. We have House Republican Vice Conference Chair Mike Johnson, who's out of Louisiana, and they're also considering a run. And according to sources who inform Fox News, they are likely to be considered in the nominee process, which will go on Monday, tomorrow. Other Republicans who have signaled their interest in running for Speaker include Budget Chair Jody Arrington out of Texas, Small Business Chair Roger William out of Texas, Austin Scott out of Georgia, and Dan Moiser out of Pennsylvania. Muser, I might have messed up that name. But Republicans, like I said, are set to meet on Monday behind closed doors to discuss their nominee. And then on Tuesday, their conference will vote for a nominee via anonymous ballot. As of now, according to a senior Republican who was discussing this with Axios, the race appears to be between Byron Donalds and Tom Emmer, if the House Majority Whip does, in fact, run for Speaker. Now, let's take a look at those two, because there's a lot of candidates I named, many, and there's probably even some that I missed that have voiced their interest. But let's focus on the two of Byron Donalds and Tom Emmer. So again, Byron Donalds, from what I know, as I followed him, I've even met him at a political conference before. He has been pretty consistent as a conservative fighter. Looking at his record, he votes relatively conservative. He is loud and advocates for conservative policies, doesn't back down, has a backbone. There was only one time that I can think of I was ever critical of Byron Donalds. And this was when there was Florida critical race theory legislation that basically said you have to discuss, as part of it, that when people were slaves, some slave masters taught slaves things like reading or valuable agricultural skills. And again, while the sin of slavery is awful, it wanted to be taught the accurate history that they learned those things as slaves and then were able to apply them once slavery was abolished. Byron Donalds sided with Kamala Harris in being critical of that legislation because he believed, or he went with the narrative that it was teaching that slavery was a good thing, which is not what it was at all. Byron Donalds, I then criticized him for that. And it wasn't because of my criticism, but because he kind of read into it a little bit more. He came out and said, I apologize. I understand the legislation. I should have looked into it better. But that was the only time I had ever been critical of Byron Donalds. He's a better option, in my opinion, than Tom Emmer. For a multitude of reasons, Tom Emmer's scores across the board are usually lower in terms of conservative fighting. He is not nearly as well known by the American public, meaning it'll be harder for people to sell public support for him when they have to go back to their constituents and say, this is who I voted for and why. So there's that. And then if I look a lot. I follow Turning Point Action and Turning Point USA very well. Turning Point Action, which is the partisan political wing and sister organization of Turning Point USA, they rate every single United States House of Representative and I believe senator and give them a rating in terms of conservatism and break it down. Tom Emmer ranks at 86% out of 100 as a conservative representative, while Byron Donald ranks at 93%. So if you're looking for the most conservative candidate, who would be a good option to advance conservative causes that is currently in the race or close to being in it, Byron Donalds would seem like one of the best options. Byron Donalds was also considered back when Kevin McCarthy was running back earlier in the year. And Byron Donalds did get some of the vote. And he also has the support of the Freedom Caucus, which are the people that voted McCarthy out in the first place. So Byron Donalds seems like a great option, but here's the obstacles that he's going to face. Once again, I want to remind everybody, you can go look up on the Turning Point Action scorecard. All you got to do is Google Turning Point Action scorecard, and you can go look at how your representative ranks. It's a great option. I'll send a link during the break in the Facebook chat and everything like that. But here's the problem with all of this. Okay, so I just went through all these different candidates and specifically the two that seem like the front runners and why I believe Byron Donalds is the best option. I think he's the best option from the viewpoint of advancing conservative and Republican ideology. However, right now, we have a presidency that's controlled by Democrats. We have a Senate that's controlled by Democrats. We have a narrow majority in the House. Now, if Byron Donalds somehow was able to get in, I'd love it. And I think that'd be great. But realistically, his chances as being the most conservative candidate are slim. He is a dream, but not necessarily a reality. What we need to do as Republicans right now is, once again, I always try to talk about the people that are voting. Now, your average voter is not the person watching this show. It's not you. It's not the person listening to the show. It's not you. It's a person that goes by headlines, what they might scroll past on social media as they're also being inundated with crap about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift and that kind of stuff. Those are the people that vote. And those are the people that swing elections. Most campaigns are focused on about 2 to 5% of the population. 5% being a very, very liberal estimate. It's usually closer to that 2%. And that's what swings elections, especially the very, very high level national ones. And so you need to focus on the people that are low information voters. And low information voters are going to look at this speaker thing right now as if they should not vote for Republicans down ballot because it makes them look disorganized and chaotic. And I understand the arguments from people that the chaos can be necessary, that it's going to lead us into a stronger Republican Party. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. But I'm going to be critical of it as well, because I also understand and I believe from people like, even my mom is more in tune now, but even my mom looks at this and she's not the most politically in tune. She's not necessarily the most, the one that looks the hardest at the political implications and what could happen if we get a more conservative speaker. But she looks at this and says, wow, it really looks like Republicans are disorganized right now because of what she sees in the headlines from her maybe 1 hour of evening news a night and stuff like that. So that's how people are going to vote. And so we need to get our act together. We need any speaker at this point that is a Republican and a tolerable Republican. And that's where I'm at with it. That's where I'm at with it. And I want to know where you guys are at with it too. So don't forget, you can text or call in at 309-451-9299 is that number, 309-451-9299. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And if you got an opinion that differs, I'd love for you to share it. Please text or call in, guys. We got more to cover here on Speechless today. But if we want to keep that conversation going again, don't forget, you can go into the comments section. We can talk about it there, or you can text or call in at 309-451-9299. So everybody, we'll be right back, though. We got to take a break here on the radio. Stay tuned until after. I'm Kev Phares, and you've been listening to Speechless. God bless you. God bless America. We'll be right back. Okay, everybody. Let's take a look at this. No more backroom, quiet budget handshake deals. Yep, I understand that. And I agree with it. We don't want that. Okay, Oklahoma Chicken Cam. I'll share your opinion. Oh, I'm getting a call now. I'm going to take that real quick. I'll share your opinion with everybody else, but I'm not going to necessarily share your opinion in agreement. Let me screen this caller real quick, everybody. Okay, that was a good caller, George, who might be calling in the next hour. My next segment, as you guys know, is very short. And so I don't love having a caller for that short segment just because the longer segments allow us to actually have a full, good conversation about a lot of different things. So let's get back to some of these comments here before we get back to the show. So I understand what you're saying here, Guillotine. Um, and so what you would have to do to make that a focus, because that's really, to an extent, it's outside. There's a way that you could make it within the purview of the speaker, of the speaker's role, but it's really not within the speaker's role to deal with that kind of stuff. The way that you would is if there was uh, reasoning to set up a commission to investigate, um, maybe like Biden's interaction with it. And if he has a clear role, I understand the frustration, and I would want somebody to look into it too. But that definitely comes with a change of leadership, especially at the presidential level, and it would also come with um, potential, potentially Supreme Court, um, not intervention, but allowing it to get to the point to which the Supreme Court would review it. So that's where the Speaker of the House it's a very tangential role that they could play. Um, but I totally understand where you're coming from. This is also true. You could also decrease, if not eliminate, funding from the DOJ and the DAs, um, which would be okay. I understand. I understand that anger once again. And while I do believe the DOJ is being weaponized for political purposes, there are instances in which they do good things. And I think it'd be foolish not to recognize that as well. I mean, when you look at, and it's same with like the FBI, like there are people in the FBI, while I do believe that a lot of our investigative bodies are going over their level of power and over the justice system entirely. Uh, Human trafficking is one thing that is at some levels being fought for at the justice level and within the FBI. And so that's kind of where I get to it. Is maybe the positives are not enough to outweigh the negatives, but I think it's worth considering the positives at least a little bit, um, and maybe streamlining funding to say, okay, this money will only go towards your division that fights child trafficking. Just saying, trying to be a critical thinker. That's what I try to do. I think it's important. But we got my kind of motivational segment in the next few minutes, just because I've had some interesting conversations with people about some different things, and more on the motivational side, but also just criticism of society as well. That'll take up just a few minutes. This I 100% agree with, Esther. 100% agree with that. Yes, this is true to an extent. Sometimes, however, chaos also caused the fall of Rome, which I guess you could say is a type of order. However, I'd rather not see America fall. I don't think it's necessarily this that'll cause that, but just saying. All right, let's come back. Nope, nothing's going to break my stride here today on Speechless. I'm your host, Kev Phares, 22-year-old conservative college student out of Illinois State University. I actually graduate in December. I will have 2 degrees in marketing and political science. Can't wait to actually be able to say that I am a college graduate with plans to go to law school next fall, working on all those kinds of things. If you're just tuning in, everybody, thank you so much for doing so. I've been covering a lot of different stories, such as Liz Cheney not ruling out a potential presidential run. And I've also talked about the Speaker of the House debacle that's kind of going on right now. And so I want to make sure that everybody, if you have missed anything, don't forget you can go on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble, and you can go back and listen to everything I've talked about today in these videos from these live streams. So go check those out, everybody. But as you guys, as many of you know, that last song that I have play on the radio is Break My Stride. Nothing's going to break my stride. Nothing's going to pull me down. I got to keep on moving. Why? Well, I've talked a lot on this show in the past about my weight loss and how I've lost about 40 pounds in the last 5-6 months. And I'm now working on building muscle. I also came to the conclusion that it's right now. I'm going to start kind of working towards training for the Chicago Marathon because it's something I would have never dreamed I would have ever done. And now that I've lost this weight and I realize how putting your mind to something can actually yield positive results. I know, fancy that. A liberal would never understand that. That if you put your mind to something and work hard, you can actually achieve your goals. Crazy. And so I started having more conversations with people about how I don't want to hear excuses from people that are bigger that, oh, well, I just can't lose the weight. I just can't lose the weight. And maybe in very, very, very specific medical diagnosis, maybe there is something out there, but the vast majority of people, especially those that are my age, that are on the larger side, should be able to lose their weight if they put their mind to it. If they put their mind to eating better and to exercising and make it a part of your daily routine. However, I've been called fat phobic, to which I have to say to you, I am not afraid of a single fat person. Or if I am afraid of a fat person, it is not because they are fat, it is because of some other thing that I might be afraid of. If I've ever been afraid of a fat person, it's because that they didn't see me and they were about to sit on me. That's the only time I've ever been in any way close to fat phobic. No, what I believe is that, and then I also get criticized. They're like, well, you fat shame. Well, I think that while I don't necessarily believe in hardcore bullying anymore, or I've never believed in hardcore bullying or something that is legally designated as harassment. What I do believe is that we need to be honest with ourselves and in society that no, fat is not beautiful. Almost no one, obviously proportionately to your height, the majority of people should not be over like 300, 350 pounds. You shouldn't be. Maybe if you're built with muscle and you work out, maybe then it adds up to that amount. But no, that is not the average. That is not a good weight or a healthy weight for most people to be at. Fat is not beautiful objectively by objective beauty standards. It's not. And so we need to bring back, while I'm usually motivational and I'm like, you can do anything. I still believe all that. You can do anything you put your mind, just about anything you put your mind to within reason, you could do it. But we also need to be realistic with ourselves in society. Bring back a little bit of shame. A shameless society is a denigrating society. You should have shame for some of your actions. Now, it shouldn't be to the point where it's a serious mental health issue, but we need healthy levels of shame. You're not good at everything. You're not perfect. And if you have shame for things that you can't control, if you have shame for things that you can control, then you'll be motivated to do something about it. Just an idea, everybody, but we got to get out of here. I got another hour coming up, everybody. Stay tuned for more Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. Okay, let's see what you guys have to say about that. I got a major troll in here. This is funny. I'd agree with this to an extent, Andrea, as we go back to that conversation. No, and I understand this, Geetin. My thing was I was like, I'm 5'7", 5'8", and I was over 200 pounds, and it was not muscle. And I was overeating. It was bad. And so I was like, I need to do something about this. And so I looked in the mirror, because I looked in the mirror every day and I hated myself from what I saw. And I knew it was because of my weight, which again, I have every ability to control over. Also, I want to say something. I didn't even get to say this part on the radio because I got cut a little short. Thank you, Raven. I appreciate that. Because I cut myself a little bit short, really. But I want to say too, all these people, especially women, a lot of it is women. I have almost never had a man say to me, oh, well, like, you're body shaming people or you're fat phobic or anything like that. No, it's almost always women. And these women will talk about body shaming to the ends of the earth. And then when you ask them the kind of guy that they want to date, they're like, oh, well, he needs to be 6'3". And then they might even mention the length of his member or how well endowed he is and everything like that. And I'm like, wait. So if I say that I don't want to date a fat woman because I want somebody who takes care of themselves, I'm all of a sudden body shaming. But when you talk about something that a guy cannot control, like their height or, again, the length of their member, then you're not body shaming. What's really going on there? Huh? A lot of them are hypocrites. That's not all of them. Maybe there's some out there that are just uber acceptance where it's like, love is love in every way and we need everything and everybody's valid and all that stuff. No. We need a certain level of shame in society. Look, if it's over shame is a bad thing. Over shame is a bad thing. But there is a healthy level of shame that motivates change. You're too kind to me for this. But it's not even about like me wanting to date these girls or anything like that. That's not where it is at all. It's just like I have such a hate for that double standard that they're blind to. Like, get your eyes checked if you are so blind that you're gonna give a guy crap, a guy that's in shape too, if you're gonna give him crap for saying I don't want to date a fat girl. And then you say in the same breath that you need a guy that's 6 foot and all these things. Like, you're just a hypocrite. And that's what I hate. I just hate the cognitive dissonance that exists in that. This is factually inaccurate. You can go to debt.org, debt.org, which just basically compiles a lot of statistics. And it says, financially, Republicans fare better than either Democrats or independents and tend to identify themselves as such. Republican candidates gain a significantly higher percentage of votes from individuals with incomes over $50,000 per year, and the advantage increases along with the income level to a height of 63% of individual earnings over $200,000 a year, supporting Republicans. This is the direct inverse of the individual earning less than $15,000 a year who support Democrats at 63% and Republicans only 36%. I'll send you the link to show you how false you are and everything that you say. And I don't know if it'll let me send all the characters in here of the specific quote I read, but let me send just about all of it in most of my places. So you're wrong, Larry. You're wrong. And all it took was a pretty quick Google search to figure that out. And so here's what I've learned, Larry. You're not only irrelevant, you're just dumb. Sorry. So be smarter, Larry. You're not very smart, Larry, and you should probably fix that. Maybe being a little bit more open-minded instead of just always coming at me with ad hominem attacks. Maybe you'd learn a thing or two, or at least learn what critical thinking was. I'd love for you to try that. Critical thinking. Larry, critical thinking. We're about to come here back and going to talk a little bit about Israel, Palestine. Cover one of my YouTube videos. I covered a little bit about this, but it just kind of leads into a lot of the stories that I've talked about. So we're going to take a look and a listen at a video here pretty early on. Hey, Bloomington Normal, and welcome back to Speechless. I'm your host, Kev Phares, 22-year-old conservative college student from Illinois State University, almost a graduate of Illinois State University. Yeah, I've been here for quite a while. I'm so happy to be talking with you guys every Sunday from 3 to 5 p.m. And you don't only have to tune in on Sundays, though. I also have a YouTube channel in which I go on and I actually do off-air content too, everybody. I do some off-air content talking about different things that happen throughout the week. Some of it I might recover on my radio show if there's new developments or anything like that, but some of it never even sees the light of day on the radio. And so you can go check that out on my YouTube channel, Speechless with Kev Phares. Look up Speechless with Kev. It should be the first thing that comes up. You'll see my bright and smiling face just going, hey, everybody, how's it going? And you can see that. You can see me live in studio right now, too. You can tune in, comment, everything like that. It's a lot of fun. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment what you think, and share it with your friends. I'd really appreciate it. I'm almost to 1,000 subscribers, so if you go check it out, that would help me get to that fun goal of 1,000. Thank you so much. Now, in this next hour, I got a lot to talk about. I'm following up with some different stories that I've covered a little bit on my YouTube channel but also following a little bit more with them, as well as a new story too. But if you want to text or call in, guys, as well, and be involved in the show that way, don't forget you can text or call in at 309-451-9299. 309-451-9299 is that number. I'd love to have some conversation about any of this. But I got two stories that are definitely going to highlight this this hour. The first being Israel and Palestine. That's been a continuing conflict. I even posted on my YouTube channel. I understand that our news has been inundated with things about the speakership in Israel-Palestine. So I tried on my YouTube channel to bring in some different content that would maybe ease us a little bit from that. But these topics are obviously, there's loss of life, especially in the Israel-Palestine conflict. It's worth talking about and discussing, especially as our president says that he's going to funnel more and more money into it. But we're going to get to that. That's not quite what I wanted to start off with. What I want to start off with is there was an insurrection at the Capitol this last week, everybody. Yes, there was. But the lamestream media didn't really cover it because it was anti-Semitic protesters that took over the I forgot exactly what it's called, part of the Capitol that they're not supposed to. Rotunda, that's what it is. Rotunda is the word. They took over the Rotunda, which is a place you're not supposed to be protesting. It interrupts people's days. People were actually arrested, some of them, for protesting in a place that they weren't supposed to be, but many of them just occupied the area and said that they would not leave until there was peace decided, and people supported Palestine, all this stuff. And even around the same time, Rashida Tlaib, you guys know Rashida Tlaib, she's quite a nasty woman, as Donald Trump would say. She went out and talked to some protesters, and her statements were not only vile, but also just factually incorrect. So let's take a listen to what she had to say outside of the Capitol earlier this week about Palestine, Israel, and specifically a hospital bombing. A hospital bombing, which actually ended up, we'll talk about what it ended up being and what it actually is right after this. But take a listen.
Continue to watch people think it's okay to bomb a hospital where children. You know what's so hard sometimes is watching those videos and the people telling the kids don't cry and let them cry. and they're shaking. And somebody, you know this, they keep telling them not to cry. And they're
That's how she sounds.
they can cry. I can cry. We all can cry. If we're not crying, something is wrong. And so I'm telling you right now, President Biden, not all of America's with you on this one. And you need to wake up and understand that. We are literally watching people commit genocide and killing the vast majority just like this. And we still stand by and say nothing.
That's what Hamas is trying to do to Israel,
this,
but she's
all of you, you need to know. Side. I swear to God, Wahyat Allah, you are on the right side of history. You are. You're doing everything possible to save lives. What is wrong with that? Stop it with trying
very, very whiny, as a traditional liberal would be. And I would actually have some sympathy for her if she wasn't just like flat out lying about all of that. What do I mean? Well, if a hospital was actually bombed, which it wasn't, the parking lot of the hospital was bombed, then I would, no matter what, if there was children involved, and they were killed, that'd be very sad. And I would actually be in some level of sympathy for that. But the fact of the matter is a full hospital is not bombed. A parking lot was bombed, but she also pushes this lie, that it was Israel's fault. Well, let's pose the question, who bombed the hospital in Gaza? Who bombed it? Well, according to Reuters, a blast at the Gaza hospital killed hundreds of Palestinians just before U.S. President Joe Biden visited Israel as the conflict between the Israeli military and Hamas militant group raged. So who bombed it? Well, Israelis and Palestinians have blamed each other for the hospital bombing, as one might expect, because somebody wouldn't really want to take responsibility for that. Biden, who stood squarely behind Israel from the start of the conflict, said that based on the information he had seen, the hospital blast appeared to be a result from an errant rocket fired by a terrorist group, echoing Israel's view. In fact, Biden, in one of the funniest moments of the Biden presidency, even said that Palestine or Hamas should have better aim next time. Actual thing, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but like essentially, that's basically what he said. He said they have to have better aim next time, which to me is one of the funniest things he has ever said, in the darkest way, in an absolutely dark way. But here's what Palestine said about this hospital bombing. They blamed Israel. Islamic Jihad, a Palestinian militant group that is an ally of Hamas, denied that any of its rockets were involved in the blast, saying it did not have any activity in or around Gaza City at that time. So you're just supposed to take their word for it. We didn't do it. Israel, however, denied it was to blame and said the blast was caused by a failed rocket launch by Islamic Jihad. An Israeli army spokesperson said an analysis of the operational systems of the IDF indicated that a barrage of rockets was fired by militants in Gaza, passing in close proximity to the hospital at the time it was hit. They even came out and said that there was audio and a file transcript that showed a conversation between two Hamas militants saying an Islamic Jihad rocket had misfired. It was not possible. It was not possible to necessarily verify that this audio was real. And even if it wasn't, though, who would you believe? Who would you believe? Would you believe the people that said, hey, we encourage you to get out of Gaza because we are going to retaliate from the Hamas attack that happened to us? Would you believe the people that warned civilians? Or would you believe the people that committed a terrorist act on October 7th that directly targeted civilians? Who would you believe in this situation? Well, really, the people I want to believe isn't Israel or Hamas, it's America. And so according to the United States, Adrian Watson, a spokesman for the National Security Council, said, while we continue to collect information, our current assessment based on analysis of overhead imagery, intercepts, and open source information is that Israel is not responsible for the explosion at the hospital in Gaza earlier this week. So who bombed the hospital? Was it Israel because Palestine said so? Or was it Palestine because of the litany of evidence that they were able to prove to confirm that it was Palestine? Or at least a Palestinian militant group, to be clear. All I'm really saying when I say all of this is it's pretty clear who did it. And yet Rashida Tlaib will still go on the steps of the Capitol, or right outside the Capitol, and say that it was all Israel and that it's all Israel's fault. And Israel, she's claiming Israel is attempting to commit genocide. That's what she claims, while in the same breath saying that Republicans are the ones who spread misinformation. Look, Democrats have one standard, and it's a double standard. They're hypocrites. Not only hypocrites, they will do the things that they accuse everybody else of doing. It's called gaslighting. On top of all that, too, I want to be clear as well, that Hamas has even come out with videos that show them removing water pipes to make rockets. Trying, and in these videos, and it's their own videos, they produce them and everything. And what they do is they put these videos out to say, look how dedicated we are to the cause. Look how dedicated we are to the cause. Well, what it seems to me is that you would rather your own people be dehydrated, which is exactly what's happening in Gaza right now. And the pro-Palestinian people will claim that it's Israel because they've cut off a lot of different supplies, as they said they would, as they warned they would. But they want to claim that it's all Israel's fault. No, you took out the water pipes, Hamas, because to you, a loss of a Palestinian life, as long as it also results in a loss of an Israeli life, is worth your cause. It's worth their cause, because who are the ones that really want genocide? Who in their charter does it say they want to eradicate the Jewish people? It's Hamas and Islamic militant groups in that area. So, I'm sorry, I'm going to take Israel's side a lot more. There's a few other things when it comes to Israel-Palestine that are developments. On top of all this, Biden has announced from a speech in the Oval Office earlier this week that apparently we need to continue being the world police. And so this is where I flip a little bit, because once again, I'm still in support of Israel verbally, entirely. I've explained on my show last week, especially as to why I believe that. But out of the Associated Press, Biden's speech earlier this week reflected an expansive view of U.S. obligations overseas at a time when he faces political resistance at home to additional funding. He's expected to ask for $105 billion. Actually, he did yesterday, including $60 billion for Ukraine, much of which would replenish U.S. weapons and stockpiles provided earlier. There's also $14 billion for Israel, $10 billion for unspecified humanitarian efforts, and $14 billion for managing the U.S.-Mexico border and fighting fentanyl trafficking, and $7 billion for the Indo-Pacific region, which includes Taiwan. Now, look, I'm for verbally supporting and kind of softly threatening opposition to our support for Israel and Taiwan. I'm not really in support of Ukraine, not verbally. I'm not in support of Russia. I am not in support of anything with that war. But we do not need to be sending more money overseas. Great that he asked for $14 billion for the Mexican border, but $105 billion total, in which more than half of that is for Ukraine. No, secure our border, fix our economy. We have too many domestic issues to be America world police right now. And look at what happened the last time that we had any kind of military activity going on over in the Middle East, when Biden withdrew from Afghanistan. Just think about that. However, Biden did say it's a smart investment that's going to pay dividends for American security for generations. I'm not really sure how much I trust Biden's investment record. I'm not sure how much I trust Biden's investment record. Look at where America is today and consider where America was just over 4 years ago, right before COVID. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't really trust you, Biden, on investments. You're quite the shill for military and military industrial complex. And that's why I say, if you hear any politician, right, left, center, anyway, that's begging for us to get into a war and to be even more involved, put more money, send troops, anything like that, don't trust them, and look to see where their money comes from, what boards they or their family might sit on, how involved they are with companies like Lockheed Martin. Because I'm telling you, they're probably involved, and it's probably paying a dividend for them. That's the investment right there. If you send my money to the military companies, it's going to come right back to me somehow. Not me, the politicians. That's what's happening, everybody. Everybody, we got to take a break here on the radio side of things, but I still will be live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble. All you got to do is look up Speeches with Kev Phares. I have one more story in the next segment to talk about as it comes to Israel and Palestine. And it's going to really, it might surprise some of you guys because it's one of Hamas's strategies to make Israel look really bad. And we're going to cover that and more, everybody, but I got to take a break, like I said. We'll be right back with more Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. If you want to text or call in, 309-451-9299 is that number. 309-451-9299 is that number. And you could also go check me out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble. We'll be right back. Let's see what we got going on here. I noticed Larry stopped talking once I proved him wrong. Real funny, Larry. I doubt it. I doubt it. Likely not. Nope. I'm also glad they got her on video acting like a fool. Because then it allows me to help expose how stupid, and whether or not it was willful ignorance in what she says for an ulterior motive, or if she's really just that dumb. Either way, it's telling. And again, absolutely express advocacy, or explicit advocacy for Israel on the world stage is perfectly fine. But when we're sending all this money that we should be using to fix our own problems here, not going to be very supportive of that. Yep. That was Ilhan Omar who said that one. Yep, I remember. I'm old enough to remember, Andrea. Don't worry. I remember. I don't know if you guys are watching football today. I've had some of it on. I think the Bears won. Good for them. As a Chicago fan, I'm happy the Bears won, but they're still crap. They haven't done a very good job this season. Oh my gosh. Very interesting. I'm sure that's a very interesting story. At some point, I'll have you call in. Maybe not today, but maybe at some point I'd like for you to call in and talk about that a little bit. We'll be back soon, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate you guys. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, everything like that. If you want to support the channel in some way, that's even more than just all that stuff. Subscribing, especially. I'm almost to 1,000 followers. That would be, if I was able to get, if everybody here right now, I see I've got around 10 people watching right now on YouTube specifically. If all of you guys shared, I would be like that close. I'd be less than 10 away from getting to 1,000. I'd really appreciate that. You could also check out my Venmo or Cash App down there, guys, scrolling if you'd feel so inclined, but do not feel any obligation. But that would help with like getting more equipment for like lighting, microphones so that I could do this from home too, and not just at the studio, and I could do more live streams, such like that. But we're going to come back now, but thank you guys so much. And we are back with Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. I'm your host, Kev Phares, and I'm a 22-year-old conservative college student. And so while I'm getting degrees and I've almost earned them in marketing and political science, I'll admit I don't know everything. And that's why I kind of like this show, because I'm not an expert. You're not an expert. Honestly, even most of the people that say they're experts, either you can't trust them because they have an ulterior motive, or they're overblown academics that have a way bigger head than they need to. And so that's why I'm here, talking to you guys about the way I see things. And if you want to be involved in the show, don't forget, you can watch this on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble. You can interact with me in those comments section. All you got to do is look up Speechless with Kev. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment, all that stuff. But you can also text or call in at 309-451-9299 is that number. 309-451-9299 is that number. And in the last segment, I was talking a lot about Israel, Palestine, that conflict, some of the things that are going on at home, domestically, like Biden saying that we just be spending $105 more billion on war. For the most part, some of it would go to the border, but it's only a small fraction, and we need a lot of money going to our southern border. But I wanted to talk about this story that I found right here because I think it's interesting, and it'll help you think about different stories you might hear a little bit differently. So this is out of the Daily Wire. Israel foils a significant and imminent terror attack by striking terror tunnels under a mosque. So Israel officials say they have executed an aerial strike on a mosque inside Gaza that was being used as a command center for terrorists who are preparing to carry out a significant and imminent terror attack. The IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, said it launched the attack on the command center located under the Al-Ansar Mosque early Sunday in local time, in conjunction with Shin Bet, an Israeli intelligence agency. So this is an important story, not even just because of hearing that this is something that the Israeli defense military did this time, but when you hear news stories where it'll come out and it'll be like, even like the one that said that Israel bombed a hospital, which again, I debunked that story in the last segment. Israel was not at least from all available evidence, that was a failed rocket by Hamas. That's what we know. But you'll hear stories like Israel bombed an apartment building. Israel bombed a school. Israel bombed a mosque, a place of worship, or a hospital. You'll hear these things. Why? Because here's what Hamas does. They know that the optics of bombing a place of worship or a school or a hospital or an apartment building, they know those optics are awful on the world stage. And it garners sympathy from people, especially people that are already sympathetic to the terrorist organization. It garners sympathy from those people and makes people more anti-Israel on the global stage. So what do? Well, Hamas sets up operations in these places, whether they might move in they might be an average Palestinian family living in an apartment building in Gaza or on the West Bank. And all of a sudden, Hamas or Jihad will move in to that apartment building down the hall, and the family will never know. But it puts their civilians at risk, because then Israeli intelligence finds out that, oh my gosh, they're running an operation in this apartment building. We need to do something about it. So they have to bomb that apartment building because there is an attack being planned in it against them. And it makes them look awful, and it results in civilian casualties. But to an extent, it's Hamas's fault. They'll do the same thing. They'll hide a stash of bombs or equipment under a school, so that they know that if Israel were to ever actually do anything, they could push out in the public media, look what Israel did. But we don't have the full context in every story, everybody. And this is exactly what happened here, except for the Daily Wire actually reports it factually, in that they were operating this under a mosque. So yes, Israel destroyed a house of worship for the Islamic faith, but it was because they were going out with their terrorist intentions through this location. And that is how evil these terrorists are, is they're willing to put all of their civilians at risk for their cause. They have no heart, everybody. I firmly believe that. These terrorists have no heart. And that's not every Palestinian, but it's a good chunk of the Palestinian population that is, if not directly fighting, also in support of Hamas. So that is just another way. I always talk on this show about how the media manipulates our minds by adding or subtracting context from stories. especially on the national level, especially in our national politics. But that's a perfect example of how they do it on the world stage. And it's Hamas that allows for the media to do that. So I hope I enlighten you guys with that one. In the next segment, in the next probably half hour, most of it, we're going to talk about how what a lot of us already knew, or at least open-minded about, is the fact that Derek Chauvin didn't murder anybody. He didn't murder anybody. And we have more conclusive evidence of that now. So we're going to come out with that, and we're going to talk more about that. Tucker Carlson came out with it. Stay tuned, everybody, for the next segment. I'm your host, Kev Phares. And if you want to be involved in the show, don't forget you can text or call in at 309-451-9299. We're going to talk about Derek Chauvin in the next segment in half hour. So thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be right back. Okie dokie. Let's see. Well, next week, Andrea, let me know. Raven, I know you're probably gone already, but I appreciate that you tuned in at all when I've been live. Big shout out to you for being such a good fan consistently. This is also very much true. This is another part of it that's very much true. But that's kind of how it works when you have, that's kind of a saving grace. While I believe that America should rely significantly on Judeo-Christian values, it is kind of a saving grace of having a non-religious affiliated country, or non-directly religious affiliated country, no national religion, because then you can't have any level of, or you have very minimal level of religious influence on military. Let's see who this caller is. City's 92.9. This is Kev. How can I help you? Andrea, how's it going? Yeah. I have the what? Oh, okay. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. I've heard of that before. Yeah. All right. All right. Well, provide me an update next week if you do. I'd love that. That'd be awesome. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, sounds good. Keep me updated, and hopefully you have that news for me next week. I appreciate it. See you later, Andrea. My good friend Andrea. You guys, a lot of you, if you're watching on YouTube, see her in the comments section. Good friend. Very interesting news potentially from her, and we're gonna hear. We'll get. She'll update us next week if that goes further. But I have a good clip coming up here, and good conversation to discuss. And we'll be right back. Talk about Derek Chauvin's innocence, or at least he's not guilty of what he was convicted for. I know that. Okay. I have I have enough time. I have to go. Maybe I do it after the next segment. I have to use the restroom at some point, but I'm a big boy. I can hold it. Also, I didn't even mention, if you guys want another way to support the show and also get some cool merch and dress like me, Anti-Socialism Social Club, check out unitedmerch.com. Use code Speechless to check out for 20% off. They're a great patriotic company. And they also not only would this support my show, but I know they also are very present at like Turning Point USA stuff. And so if you want to support just youth conservatism in general, you could purchase from their site if you want some fun shirts, hats, stuff like that. He very well might have. It was quite a while ago since the trial, and so I got a recap of what happened and where we're at now. But I don't remember exactly what he said at the trial. Once again, guys, share my channel with other people. I'd really appreciate it. Again, I'm so close to the 1,000 subscriber mark. I've been pretty close for a while. Just had a bit of a bump in the last few days from one video that went really high. So, well, it's at least starting to. Some of it we already had, but. Okay. We're about to come back here. Hey, and welcome back to Speechless. I'm your host, Kev Phares, 22-year-old conservative college student out of Central Illinois, host of Speechless, obviously here on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. But I say beyond because I'm not only on the radio, I am also on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble. All you got to do is look up Speechless with Kev, and you'll find me there, Speechless with Kev, and you can watch me live in studio right now. And also, if you go to YouTube and look up Speechless with Kev, you can see some off-air content where I cover different news of the week. I react to different videos. I talk about a lot of different things, and so you can go check that out and see me in an even different element and interact with the channel. You can like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment what you think. You can even comment right now on the live stream, and I can interact with you that way. Or you can share it with your friends too. If you think they're a liberal and it'll tick them off, do that. Or if they're conservative and they'd agree, that'd be just fine too. You can share it with all your friends. But guys, I've been covering a lot of different things on the show today, and we're going to go into a different route for the next half hour, a little bit with a different type of story. I covered the ongoing controversies of Israel-Palestine. I covered Liz Cheney potentially running for president. And I even covered the Speaker of the House ruckus that's going on right now, to put it lightly. And so now we're going to get into what Tucker Carlson brought up this last weekend. Derek Chauvin is a name that many people know. He's been labeled as the face of white supremacy for the media narrative that he was the murderer of George Floyd. Now, that ended up causing a lot of ruckus, again, to put it lightly. But Chauvin is currently serving a 22-and-a-half-year prison sentence he received in June 2021 after a jury found him guilty on charges of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter in the death of Floyd that sparked months of civil unrest, resulting in 25 additional deaths and billions of dollars of property damage in cities nationwide. Now, in the original case, the Hennepin Medical County Examiner ruled that Floyd's death was a homicide caused by, quote, cardiopulmonary arrest, complicating law enforcement subdual restraint, and neck compression. That's according to Reuters. The report also noted that methamphetamine, fentanyl, were also in his system at the time of his death, alongside his previous known conditions of hypertension and coronary artery disease. Floyd's family commissioned a separate autopsy to be done that ruled his death as a homicide by asphyxia due to neck and back compression, ruling out any other medical issues noted by the county coroner. Of course, they paid for their own commission, so George Floyd's family would have one that makes him look like a squeaky clean guy so that they could spread the false narrative that he was this perfect father, no faults, sinless man, practically a saint, all these things. Well, now Tucker Carlson, as well as Twitter, has brought to light a lot more evidence. And so we originally saw, we knew already that the original autopsy seemed to be a little fudged because it claims that it was asphyxia, even though there was no significant damage to the neck, or at least that would rule a strangulation or asphyxia. There was much more evidence to show that his death was due to a drug overdose. That's what it seemed much more likely. When you have a lethal level of methamphetamine and fentanyl in your system, what seems more plausible? That your death was caused by a brief time of a knee on your neck, or when you were going obviously through drug overdose symptoms? I don't know. Asking questions here, but Tucker Carlson seems to provide some answers. And so he came out. This is a clip from one of his most recent Tucker on X, Tucker on Twitter videos. And so we're going to it's a little long. I might interject in a little bit of it, but just listen to the evidence that he brings forth. Take a look and a listen if you're on Facebook.
Significantly, they also sent a cop called Derek Chauvin to prison for more than 40 years. He would be the racist white devil who murdered George Floyd. But the question is, did he actually murder George Floyd? And the answer is, well, no, he didn't murder George Floyd. And we're not guessing about that. We know it conclusively, thanks to a new court case now underway in Hennepin County, Minnesota. The case was brought by a prosecutor there called Amy Sweezy. She's suing her boss. So the case is not actually about George Floyd or Derek Chauvin, but it tells you an awful lot about both of them. In her deposition, which you should read, Amy Sweezy describes a conversation that she had with the county medical examiner, Andrew Baker, right after George Floyd died. Quote, I called Dr. Baker early that morning to tell him about the case and to ask him if he would perform the autopsy on Mr. Floyd. Sweezy recalls all this under oath in the deposition. Quote, he called me later in the day on that Tuesday, and he told me that there were no medical findings that showed any injury to the vital structures of Mr. Floyd's neck. There were no medical indications of asphyxia or strangulation. Oh. In other words, George Floyd, according to the official autopsy, was not murdered. He died instead of what we used to call natural causes, which in his case would include decades of drug use, as well as the fatal concentration of fentanyl that was in his system on his final day. So this was not a killing. It was yet another narcotics OD in a country that records more than 100,000 of them every year. The medical examiner clearly understood that and, in fact, articulated it. And Sweezy explains. He said to me, she recalls in the deposition, Amy, what happens when the actual evidence doesn't match up with the public narrative that everyone's already decided on? And then he said, quote, this is the kind of case that ends careers. In other words, everyone lied about it from the very beginning. The people who knew the truth hid the truth and allowed the revolution to proceed. Now they've been exposed.
Now they've been exposed. So that was a clip, obviously, from Tucker on Twitter, exposing, based on this new lawsuit coming out of Hennepin County, that there was a lot more involved in spreading this, once again, false narrative that George Floyd was murdered by Derek Chauvin. And look, here's the first thing, too, is so I've already made it clear. I've made it clear since even this happened that this had nothing to do with race. It was really sad to see how polarizing it became because of race. Nowhere ever was it ever proven that Derek Chauvin had any distaste, dislike, or hatred for people of different races than his own. And so it never did have anything to do with race. But because it was so politicized over race, it allowed for the emotion to take over and the irrational thought process to begin, to where it was demanded. It was demanded that Derek Chauvin was a murderer before the trial ever began, before evidence was ever presented, anything. There was also claims from members of the jury that they were heavily worried because of how publicized this was, because of how high emotions were during it, that if they were to come down with a ruling that was not guilty, then they would be targeted in some way. So I want to be clear about one thing, too, is I have heard conflicting stories on whether the knee on the neck is an acceptable form of restraint in policing. I don't 100% know. If anybody is more of an expert on that, I'd love for you to enlighten me either in the comment section or by texting or calling at 309-451-9299. I'd love that. But I'd also like to point out with this too, that it's just a bad visual. Whether or not it's acceptable, it was a bad visual and definitely did not help in terms of the layman understanding of the situation. Doesn't look great. But all the evidence provided from the beginning, and now what Carlson has brought to light through this new lawsuit, the Sydney Sweeney lawsuit, is that we have two things that are very, very important being demonstrated. We have a litany of things that are being demonstrated, but two that are very important. The first is what I've said during this segment, and that what we all know is that Derek Chauvin did not murder George Floyd. Derek Chauvin did not murder George Floyd. That man, Chauvin, is currently sitting in prison for crimes he did not commit. Because of a false media narrative that brainwash an entire sector of society. For real. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, he said, I think I've written down here, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Injustice everywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Well, Derek Chauvin's conviction is a threat to justice everywhere. This is an example, which we've seen in multiple cases before, especially recently, of somebody who was guilty until proven, not even guilty until proven innocent. This was guilty no matter what. He was a sacrificial lamb to the BLM community that caused billions of dollars of damage and over 25 deaths in their riots and protests on the false media narrative that this had something to do with race, when it never did. It only did because they said it did, because they gave power to it, when in reality, there is no evidence to prove any motive that this had anything to do with race. So billions of dollars of property damage, lives lost, and rampant chaos and crime were entirely based on a lie. Once again, Derek Chauvin was the sacrificial lamb to these people. The second thing that is very important to point out about this is the power of the media in the situation and the necessity for critical thinking in our society. What is critical thinking? Considering the alternative, no matter how wacko it might seem, and asking yourself, if the alternative were true, if something I don't necessarily believe is true, if it were, if the other side was right, what would that mean? What precedent would that set for another potential chain of events? Because that is something that is obviously lost on our society nowadays. I want to circle back again to the media power that they really hold. They consistently, if you watched MSNBC, CNN, heck, even at the time, Fox News, for the most part, depending on the host, they would even push, if not blatant, at least subtle narratives that advocated the idea that Derek Chauvin was the murderer. The fate of Derek Chauvin was decided immediately after the video of him 9 minutes on the neck, which again seemed like a lot, and I'm not going to excuse all the behavior. I'm not going to say that he's a saint or anything like that. I don't know. I don't know the man. I don't know all police conduct, and I don't know whether or not that was okay. But what I do know is he is not guilty, based on all the evidence provided. He is not guilty of murder, and an innocent man is sitting there. And it's because as soon as that video was posted, the media and many in society had made up their minds without considering any potential alternative. And just like Candace Owens has multiple times exposed, BLM and their funding and the massive funding that they got during that time, which again went to $1 million mansions for their founders and luscious expenses instead of actually going to help anybody. It was entirely based on a lie. We know that the amount of times that cops use lethal force without justification is very minimal against anybody. And then it's even lower for people of color because it's got to be lower than the overall. We also know now with definitive evidence, Derek Chauvin is not guilty of murder. And I believe, as I currently understand it, he is going to the Supreme Court. His attorneys are bringing this to the Supreme Court due to lack of a fair trial. So, everybody, what do you think? Am I wrong? Always tell me if I'm wrong, but at least be able to back up the opinion. You can text or call in at 309-451-9299. 309-451-9299 is that number. I'd love to hear from you guys. We got one more segment coming up here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Always go and check out the YouTube channel, Speechless with Kev Phares. Like, subscribe, share, and comment, all that fun stuff. And we'll be right back with more Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. All right. Let's see what else we got going on here. Esther, thank you so much. I really appreciate you for that. It means more than you know. So thank you. Yep. Thank you, Ryan. That's so nice of you guys. I really do appreciate the kind words. especially on my YouTube channel. Go check out, if you guys aren't on my YouTube channel, I have gotten a lot of haters on my YouTube channel comments recently. And maybe it's just because the people that like the video, they hit the like button and they're like, I like it. That's it. But positive comments on different videos, especially my off-air ones, are also very appreciated because otherwise it looks like I just get all these haters in the comment section. And I'm like, I respond to some of them with facts and logic and my best to be kind. But thanks for covering the hole in the wall. A lot of times I'm charging my phone because that hole is for a plug. So a lot of times during a show I'll be charging my phone, but not today. Not today. Absolutely, Ryan. I don't know about this. I just know maybe I'm even a victim to the media narrative as well. Maybe that's something I'll cover in the next section, is that we all become victims of the media narrative. Because there was a time where even I would say I was even more uncertain when I would, because when there is a coroner's report, that's another thing I want to talk about too. We're going to smash a lot into this next section of just advice for everybody. A lot of people become victims to the media narrative. And the mainstream media narrative. And that's why it's important to critically think. There was even a time where I was more open to the idea that Derek Chauvin had murdered George Floyd, because that's what, I mean, when you have a coroner's report that says that it was a homicide, it was like, I don't know what to believe anymore. That's really where I've been at with a lot of it. I don't know what to believe anymore. But now I do, because I've been exposed a lot more to what actually is. And really, here's the best piece of advice. About 10% at best of what the media tells you is the truth. Probably. I mean, like, I don't have anything, but based on my experience from what I see and what I interact with, about 10% of what the mainstream media will tell you is the truth. About 10% of it. And just like Esther says here, discernment, a skill few have. It's a skill. But knowing that it's a skill and not a talent necessarily. For some it could be a talent, but knowing it's a skill, it means it's something that you could learn. It's something that you could acquire if you don't already have it, which I'm willing to bet you do, because you're watching this or listening to this rather than spending your time with like Face the Nation or anything like that. This absolutely, Larry. That's something I'm going to follow up with this week. Do some more research on what actually is going on with Hunter and what other areas we need to still be focusing on. Thank you for bringing my brain back. Thank you, Larry. We'll be back here in about a minute and a half. But Larry's right. What is going on with Hunter? Where's Hunter? Whose cocaine was in the White House? I'm sorry, but like, whose cocaine was in the White House? Whose was it? We never knew. We have the technology. We have the technology as an American society to be able to tell with reasonable levels of certainty that Israel is not to blame for the bomb of the hospital in Gaza, the hospital parking lot in Gaza. We have that technology to know that level of what's going on in those countries, but not for you to be able to tell me whose cocaine was in the White House. Like, seriously? Seriously. That's the America we live in right now. That's the America we live in right now. That's why Commander had to go. Someone got a hold of the stash. Oh yeah, the dog that keeps biting Biden. The dog that keeps biting Biden. Not even biting Biden, it's biting his Secret Service. I got to keep on moving here on Speechless. Guys, thank you so much for always spending time with me from 3 to 5 p.m. on Sundays. I really do appreciate it. I'm your host, Kev Phares, 22-year-old conservative college student out of Illinois State University. And you can even not only listen to me on the radio, but you can go check me out, like many are right now, on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble. I highly recommend you go check out my YouTube. I post exclusive off-air content there where I cover a lot of different news stories out of the week. And you can check out exactly different things that I'm saying, reacting to, and it's a lot of fun. And you can subscribe. I'm almost to 1,000 subscribers. So if you want to go do that, I would really, really appreciate it. But I only have a few minutes left here in this show. And so I want to talk about something because last segment I laid out how we know almost conclusively now, at least according to deposition in a new case in Hennepin County in Minnesota, that confirms that there were politically forced motives to rule George Floyd's death a homicide instead of natural causes or a drug overdose. And so I want to talk about a few things. First off, and I started talking about this one a little bit in the last segment, is how important it is that we question what we are told by governing bodies and the media. Look, don't take everything even I say. Don't even take all of that as absolute truth. Look it up. Do your own research. Try to find where I could even be wrong. Listen, I'm honest with everybody. I tell you, this is an opinion show. I'm not like a hardcore journalist necessarily. I am an opinion host where I take things. Sometimes I find news and I'm in part of it or whatever. That's part of journalism, I guess. But I'm an opinion host. The lamestream media, they're also opinion hosts. So recognize that. They're not necessarily as honest with you about it as I am. Go listen to don't turn my show off, but go listen to people that are maybe on the other side of the aisle or think differently than I do. It's perfectly fine. I recommend it because then maybe you'll get exposed to an idea that's different. And that's okay because we can use those listening to every idea to root out the bad ones. That's my first thing. And that ties in significantly to the media controlled the narrative on George Floyd's death, saying that Derek Chauvin must have been a murderer. He was a racist. He was all these awful things. When now we know that basically every mainstream media, lamestream media narrative around that situation was a lie. Almost every part of it. Almost every part of it. The second thing I want to be clear about, because this is something that you might not have thought about, is how important your local elections are. I spend too much time, I know, on this show even talking about the presidential elections, congressional, Senate, everything that goes on at the federal level. The local coroner is the one who ruled that George Floyd's death was a homicide. You vote for most places, not every place, but most places you vote for your local coroner. You vote for the coroner. That's why it's important that you are up to date and you know what is going on in your local elections. I know we have ours coming up here in Illinois soon. Make sure you are involved. Make sure you know. Because God forbid a George Floyd situation happens in your town. Would you want the coroner that caves to societal pressure and rules it a homicide when it's pretty clear it's not and they know it's not? Or would you want the person that would stand with the truth no matter if it gets them hate, if it gets them discriminated against, if it gets them death threats? Who would you want? That's why we need to be so involved in our local elections, everybody. That's just one of many reasons, but that is a clear, definable reason because that report became the basis for the national media narrative in which the lies were spread. So pay attention to your local elections, everybody. We got more coming up, but I got to get out of here. This is the end of my show for Sunday, everybody. I'm going to say a quick goodbye on YouTube and everything, but I always want to say God bless you. God bless America. And until next week, thank you so much for everything. We'll see you later. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate everything that you guys have. Okay, once again, we've talked about the autopsy. I talked about the autopsy. And I talked about how it was politically motivated. And the majority of the new evidence that I was also bringing up was the deposition, the under oath deposition from the Sydney Sweeney case. That's the other thing. But okay, believe what you want to believe, everybody. I got to get out of here. Thank you guys so much. Don't forget to like this video. Dislike it if you really want to. I'd appreciate a like though. Comment on the video too. I appreciate the comments in the live chat, but also comment on the video. Boost it up in the algorithm a little bit. Share it with your friends. That'd be a big one. Share this video with your friends. And don't forget also to subscribe if you're not already. Almost to 1,000. I'm like 30-ish away from 1,000. Would love to get there. And sharing and telling other people to subscribe would be very much appreciated. God bless you guys. God bless America. And until next time, you've been watching Speechless. Thank you so much.